We're live.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the dojo. My name is Carmen. We've got Ray and we've got Nathmar here. Sean is not able to make it this week, so we're gonna jump right in and get started. It's been a big week. I feel like I said that last week. I feel like every week I'm saying that it's been a big week. So I guess we'll just jump right in. Nathmar, what do you think about the landscape of this week? How are you feeling?
I mean, this week was crazy. I saw numbers like jumps from some of our favorite NFTs that I was not expecting till another few months from down the road, right? So they exploded even beyond my expectations. So it's pretty. I mean, I'm excited. I'm pumped. I have a lot invested, as you guys know, so I'm pretty excited. But I'm at a loss of words because I think we're hitting numbers that we weren't expecting till later, maybe towards the end of the year or next year. So
Right. What about you?
Uh, I'll kind of hit the same thing Nothmar said. Love the increase in prices, but I think that I think what was really telling is what happened over the past kind of 2 or 3 days, right? So we saw there's two drops back to back. I think we saw a pullback in the market, right? Wonder Woman went back under 1,000 for the first time, well, since last week, which is in Veve time seems to be a year. But it pulls back, and I think we're seeing that there's still going to be good opportunities to play the marketplace as bigger drops come. It wasn't even a big weekend for drops, but we saw the pullback. But then what do we also see? Two key things to me. One, we saw that the floors are being established. We're not going to see the Todds back into the 3K. I just don't see it, right? So
PK,
we're
not
seeing
even
some
close.
strong support levels, but I also think that we're seeing as soon as those are over, now we're hitting new highs, right? People are still sitting on the sidelines and like, you know what? Didn't hit the drop this weekend, so now we're buying in. So I think as I start to look at how am I going to play the next big decon or Disney, week, what am I looking for? The big drop off right towards the middle, but knowing that the support levels are finally starting to build in, it gives me again ever growing confidence in kind of my investment and feeling a little bit more comfortable as I shift more of my assets into Vive.
I mean, can I add to that point? Yeah, because
Gotcha.
like I
Yeah, I
trade.
think.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, just add to that point because like
No, you're
I
good.
trade
Go for it.
I trade stocks too, and I track like floors and support for stocks all the time. So especially for volatile products, you have to be aware of the floor and the support, right? So it's got to be a lot of highs and a lot of lows. So you got to be careful buying when it's really high. It might dip, but it might go up again. So that's important point that Ray mentioned.
And I know Carmen dropped, but I think just kind of oh, hey, what's going on, Carmen? I'll let you pop in the seat. But the one thing I did want to add to that, and I do think is pretty crucial too, that I notice is that we're also seeing some of the collectibles that aren't blue chips are seeing much wilder price drops, right? Like we're seeing. I'm real pumped about Voltron. We're back over 100 again. My big investment into Voltron's looking better and better by the week.
Oh,
But
Voltron.
take the hoverboards for example. I love them, Carbon. I
Oh.
bought into them because you got me there. But the no tech pumps to 100, right back down to 55. Right. So I think we're seeing that the blue chips, very much like stocks, are starting to continue to maintain the support levels. But you're going to see a lot more volatility, which also means a lot more opportunity for investment and quick short term flips and some of the I guess blue chip, whatever we want to call them, collectibles, comics, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I first of all, I want to apologize for dropping. We are once again dealing with some rain and snow in South Jersey, so if I cut loose, I'm going to try and just jump right back in. Yeah, just for some perspective, I've been trying to track like my Sundays and just getting a sense of overall value, and I've been keeping my my vault value and what it is as it stands. But then I've also kept like a high, like whatever the highest of everything has been, I've kept that high number. And like just what's crazy is yesterday my high was 25, it was 24K. today my high is almost 28, and it's now I'm super diversified for the most part. Like I am more of a collector in a lot of that, but I think one of the things that I'm seeing are the new floors, like these floors that are a little more stable. The blue chips are up and staying up for the most part. The next question becomes, what's like the tier 2 collectible? Like that's kind of more now in my brain. As far as the week goes, we've got that ASM 798. I don't know what Veve's trying to do. I don't know if I think they're just trying to explore our behavior with some of this stuff to figure out what wins. And I don't know. I think and I wrote the article. I'm not sure if it's on the website yet, but I think you're starting to see, people who have figured out the comics and the pop culture stuff and people who haven't. And, people are a new comic book is dropping and some people are like gobbling it up. And then some of us are kind of on the fringes and in the periphery, just kind of like, I don't know if I would go. I wouldn't spend 20, even if the floor is initially $20. I don't think it's going to stay at $20 because I know the comic, so it's probably going to fall back down to 11, maybe. So we're seeing those books start to show up more. And then we had The Invisible Woman on Saturday, which it was. I'll talk about this later in the final thoughts, but I think it was a loss for a lot of people. Like that's one of those collectibles where I think you're learning, I don't need to win the drop if I want the common. I don't need to win the drop if I want the uncommon in some of these situations. Maybe I'll throw my $50 in the hat to try and get a secret rare, but that's a different game, right? Like gambling, like trying to get the drop is different from, I like the common, I want to buy the common, I don't care about the lottery, right? And then we've got like, it's our second appearance, but it's the realistic look, even though a lot of people think it looks like garbage. So where does that sort of fall? And then we saw today with the Germain drop, this is my own personal opinion. I'm sure there are fans out there that love a lot of this indie stuff, but I expected that Dero to go through the roof because it's his like season 2 drops that we experienced. Well, we had the rabbits and we had Dero, and now we get these new bears. And I think the bears are coming back down to earth, and the Dero really isn't taking off. So the question becomes like, do these indie artists have longevity in this platform in the near future, in 10 years? So that's kind of where I'm at. That's where my brain is for this past week.
Yep. No, I mean,
Yeah.
I commented when you posted on the Germain drop. I mean, I think they're undervalued, but I don't expect them to blow up like during drops or immediately. I think long term, I can definitely see them doubling and tripling in value. Just I don't know how long. So I mean, I would definitely invest in them, but I wouldn't expect them to see the same amount of explosive gains we've seen from like the Joker or etc. Because there's a lot of comic book collectors in this space, so maybe the comic book collectors are driving the prices for comic book stuff up, and then indies are probably less. But once more indie collectors probably join the space, maybe there's potential. So longer term, I would say there is potential, but yeah, I wouldn't expect them to be explosive in terms of gains like in the next month or two.
Yeah, I want to. I think I'll add to that and say that as I look at some of the indie drops, I'll go for the drop itself, but I stayed out of the market. FOMO almost got me because it flew, right? It started like 90, went up to 360, now it's back to 160. But I think the problem I have sometimes with indie, and it was my problem with serial killers, is you're looking at a pretty niche market. You've got to. It's hard to know what the indie collectors want to buy into, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we all are big comic book guys. We're big on the Marvel DC. We know what we're looking at, kind of what Carmen just talked about with the comics. We know what we're looking at when they drop AF-15 some point in the future. We know what that means. I don't have any idea what a Dero means. I just don't, right? So as I look at an investment opportunity, I see $160 for this bear and I see 140 for, say, Fantastic Four 5 comic, I'm not going to bet on the niche market right now because I don't see it. I don't know that there's a big enough demand to drive a shorter, medium term value. Long term, sure, because there's only 3,000. So eventually, 3,000 indie people will be there to buy it for $300, right? But I think that for me, I think that's kind of what I'm seeing is that the indie market's pulling in kind of those niche buys, and you can go for a quick flip, but just as easily as you made 100 on that drop, you could have lost 160 when it fell.
Right. Yeah, totally. And I think we're finally in a position too where we have to, and myself included, have to really take a moment, pause, and reflect on the type of consumers we want to be on this app. What is our goal? What are our goals? What's our plan? I've said this several times, like I'm in this for 5 years. I know how much money I plan on investing. I know when I am ready to pull the plug. I think, we've had the conversation in our group, like, hey, this is, for some of us, this is a bad trip to Vegas. Like, this is one bad vacation. So whatever, like if it goes to zero, I met some super cool people and I had fun. For other people, and when that's your mindset, you're playing a much different game than someone who's like, I have to pay my bills with the collectibles I'm flipping this week. It is a different game. Yes. So I think that's kind of where we're at. So we're almost every collectible. I'm thinking, what is my plan for this collectible? Do I buy 2? My plan for Storm, because I have 10 of them, is different than my plan for. I just bought Catwoman, and I lost her for a while. I finally got her back. I just bought Catwoman, and she's pretty much at a relatively new high. I was happy with the mint, and I'm like, okay, I see Catwoman becoming a Harley Quinn type thing. And Harley Quinn is at like anywhere from 900 to 1,200. It took a year. So I'm just in that collectible for a year versus these other ones,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, from the Hangover crew, I think I'm the bearded guy. I forgot his name, so.
Fair.
But another thing to add there is like I do have a couple of indies like the Dragon Lady and, for example, the Labbits. I have not seen gains. If anything, some of them have dropped, and then they're now starting to inch back to where I bought them. So they're still at a loss. So I mean, yes, they are risky, but I still think they're an ace in the hole. I think down the road they will gain like exponentially. But but they're definitely not. They don't have the same growth short term as some of our favorite comic book collectibles and comic books right now, right? But I still think they're my ace in the hole. Down the road, these Labbits will be reproducing like by the dozens.
Fingers crossed. Now, speaking of that and what we're buying and why we're buying it, money well spent. It's been a segment that went really well over the last couple of weeks. We're going to keep moving forward. Ray, you said before we went live that, we've been doing 300 and 1,000, and we are kind of entering this world where it might have to be 500 and 1,000 because it's so crazy to think that right now, what do you buy with $300? I just bought, the Catwoman. I sold some stuff, but the Catwoman was $340. And
that's over. You got to keep it under 300.
Right. So I am now living in this world of, if I'm going to make a $300 bet, it's more of a short-term come up because of the way the market is. So I would go heavy into Iron Fist I would be buying, at this point, I'm buying multiples of things. Like if I'm buying a couple Storms, a couple Iron Fist 14s, a couple hoverboards, I'm buying multiples of items that are roughly $15 to $100, which puts me at, I can't even name a whole bunch of comics. I know if Sean were here, he'd be pounding the hammer for New Mutants 98, which I think is a great bet, right? If New Mutants 98 is $30 right now and you're going to spend $300, just buy 10 of them, put them in your bag and keep it moving. And then that's your money for the month. And then you move on to the next one. What about you guys for $300?
Right,
What do we
right.
think, Malcolm?
I guess I'll lead off. So
Yeah, right.
I'm in the same boat. I think if you're looking for 300 right now, you've got to diversify at the smaller amounts because it's just too difficult to find one of those higher growth collectibles right now until we see a dip. Then it's kind of a different ball game. But for me right now, I'm probably going to go with the Storm Common. I think the Deadpool Uncommon's a pretty solid bet. I actually like Groot. I think that if we see the same thing everyone says about Deadpool, if you can remove the holiday decorations and then Guardians of the Galaxy 3 comes out here and whatever, I think Groot's here to stay in the MCU. And I think that that's probably, it's not a $40 collectible. It's probably 60, 70, 80. I think that's a good bet right now. And I'm with you. I'm probably leaning comics. Uh, I like New Mutants 98, but I really like Fantastic Four 5 for 125 ish, wherever it's sitting now. I still like that comic. I think that we're seeing more and more money piling into the market cap of comics. I think the market cap is expanding a little bit more rapidly than some of the collectibles are, minus the Todds and whatnot. So I think as that market continues to widen, those Silver Age keys, I think, has a lot of room for growth still and a lot of potential. So if it's me, I'm going to do one Storm for 100, probably one Groot, and then one Fantastic Four or 5 for 125, and then save the rest for a drop.
Nice. What about you, Nathmar? Where are you at?
Yeah, I'm used to this bargain basement shopping, not unlike you guys. So I like these like really low prices. So I definitely I like Ray's recommendations. The Deadpool Storm, use hoverboards definitely. But like for me, I would definitely consider the Enterprise D. I think those are still 100 something, 130. There's the Steve Rogers, that's like 120. I mean, I can definitely see that still busting like over two, $300 maybe in a few months. And the Borg, come on, guys, the Borg. I think the Borg, the smaller one, because the bigger Borg I think is a little bit higher, but the smaller one I think is still like 100 or something. So I think those are prime for a pump. And of course, my Mighties, Fantastic Four and Eternals. Those are two. Although I don't have too much Eternals, but I think after seeing the movie, I think there's potential for the Eternals Mighties also.
You got me. I will say I'm leaning after seeing what happened with Invisible Woman. Like I grabbed two things, and I think I grabbed two things at 30. So I don't know if I got the timing. I think maybe I had one thing and then bought another one when I saw the pop, and still managed to get it in under what the floor is right now.
Yeah,
So I
but
went.
it's been going up and down. That's the thing, though, right? So
Yeah.
a little bit on the peak. So
I grabbed another thing and I got a Falcon because I was like, that seems like a slam dunk, really.
oh yeah, no, I definitely. I mean, I like all the Mighties that are under $75. I think they can get up to 100 like in a few months, right? So I think there's potential. So anything that's under 75, I think is a deal for Mighties. I think.
Nice. Now for the $1,000 purchase, we get to play around a little bit more. Now $1,000, I think everybody should have a UR DeLorean if you don't have one yet. I just think if you plan on renting anything, a UR DeLorean right now is super important in my opinion. And I'm not people, because I'm sure people are going to freak out. I'm not saying it's exactly like Todd. It's not the Todd bats, but it's very, very similar to like its iconic thing. If you can drive it, I believe it'll be like the first drivable car. It's got the Back to the Future thing. Ready Player One kind of is the icing on the cake with that. So it just has meaning that will carry itself for a long time. And if you can only drive the interactive one, you're going to want to drive it. And if you can make a couple gems a day when you can start staking Omi, it'll pay for itself in the long run anyway. So I'm either the UR DeLorean, or I would chop it up and go like, I think the Catwoman now, because I see her very similar to Harley Quinn, especially if her character in the movie really takes off, I think that'll be pretty important. And she's around, like I said, 340. And you might want to double up on her. I think the Pitbull hoverboard, there's only 3,300 of them. So I think they're very undervalued right now. I don't think it's going to take much for someone to realize that, jump in. And I think on any given day, there's only like 70 in the marketplace. So I would because you can't just buy one of those things with a $300 budget. I would look for a mix of 3 items that you could sort of toss together. Nathmar, what about you?
Yeah, I like Robin number 76. So I think that's what is that now? 300? Probably 300, right? I think that can definitely hit $1,000 in a year, maybe sooner. As things are going, it'll probably be 1,000 in a month. so
Yeah.
so I like the Robin. I like the Spider-Man common and uncommons. They're I think still between 500 to 800. So load up on Spideys as much as you can, and I like to mix it up. And I still think the Dragon Girls. See, that's my. I still think they're the black sheep. They have their potential that's unrealized. I think I would get like a few Dragon Girls.
Yeah, that Robin, I totally forgot. I think he's probably like Catwoman, Robin, and that
Robin.
Pitbull would be for me if you're going to go with those 3. The Robin especially. So the
He's
thing
at
about
400 right now.
oh really?
Oh, it's like 380. Yeah, I think like
I mean,
380.
at the minimum, it can hit $500,
Yeah.
right? So,
I think it's $1,000 collectible because they added the FA tag. That was not there. Herb and I were talking about that for a while. They just now it says FA, and I think for newer comic book fans, for newer Batman fans, he's the better Robin. Like I look at that other Robin that's regardless of the mint number that's selling right now.
The older one, yeah.
I think it's like 1,800 or something crazy. I look at that one and I'm like, well, if that's trading for 1,800, there's no reason why Robin can't go for $1,000. So that, yeah, good call. Good call. What about you, Ray?
Yeah, so I was thinking kind of 3 options for me. One, I'm in the camp that if you don't have a Spider-Man collectible, get one from the first series. I think it's the common. I think it's about to blow past 1,000 within the next month. I don't see any way that it maintains where it's at because you've already got the ultra rare. It shifted from 6.9 up to about 9K, right? So that's it got
wow.
up to about I think 8.8 was what I last saw it at. And so that's a 50% increase. And what we see once that shifts, we've already seen it happen before. The rare shifts up, so now it's over 2K. What's the next ones to move? It's going to be the uncommon and the common. So I think
Yep.
I'm curious to see if it plays out the same. But I think again we're going to see a shift up to about the 1.3, 1.4K4 here pretty soon. So that's if you're looking at a short term and you don't have one, get one because that's the play. I think that if you have those, I think the other 2 options I've been looking at, number one's Ultraman. So we saw in the news this week China is looking to possibly detach NFTs from them constantly saying crypto. Like, for better or worse, they always say crypto is going to be illegal and then, whatever. But they said this week they may pull NFTs out. And we know Ultraman has a new series coming out. We know it's huge in the Asian markets. I mean, the common is now at 900. And when I recommended it like 3 weeks ago, it was sitting at like 250. I think it has more room to grow. And then the third way I would go with it is a Steamboat Mickey common plus a Marvel Comics one. That almost totals exactly to 1,000. Now, I don't believe Steamboat Mickey is the next Todd, despite what everyone says, because I just don't know that it has the same staying power once you see more Mickeys come out. But there's a lot of FOMO right now. For short term, I 100% think it's more than a $600 collectible. Marvel Comics 1, you can't go wrong with that book. 0% chance that it doesn't ultimately hit over four figures if Veve continues to overperform for comics. So I think you put those 2 collectibles together, you've got a good 1-2 years medium term portfolio.
Nice. Now, we're kind of gonna. I don't know if we're gonna repeat ourselves because I think the money well spent is a little bit different from our top 5 collectibles versus comics because I think we're picking these items for different reasons, right? So, if we're looking at our top 5, and I'm reflecting on my collectibles list, it's definitely not necessarily like my best way to spend money. For me, top 5 for the week, Todd Batman is just I just think it can't be. It's a different thing. It is moving in a trajectory that I just don't understand. I don't know why. Again, I'm the biggest Todd.
Batman.
I'm the Todd Bats hater. I don't like it, but I have to respect it. If I could afford it, I would have one. It's just it just is. I think it's becoming the NFT on Veve. My next one is Wonder Woman. She is now in the conversation of being Superman, Batman, like that trilogy, Trinity thing. I think for a while people hated her for the wrong reasons, and now she's finally getting what she deserves. I think she's probably going to be a $3,000 or $4,000 collectible, 4,000 gem collectible in the very near future. Robin, he 3x'd in about a week, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that he's now a first appearance. People now know that it's a different Robin. I think this speaks to, again, what I mentioned in the article, the difference between people who understand comic books and people who understand pop culture and people who are just kind of getting their feet wet in Veve as buying and selling NFTs, and they're not super certain about what they're buying. I think comic book collectors a month ago, I think 2-3 months ago, we were talking about, oh, that's Damian Wayne. Like, why aren't people buying that? But I think this Robin will become the Robin that people expect, especially younger people. Anybody who's now 10, 15 years old, this is the Robin that they are experiencing regularly. And then Steamboat Willie has back from the dead. I think this time last week, I was drafting the article that I was writing that was dropped today, and I was like, oh man, I'm down 150 gems on Steamboat Willie, and now I'm like, oh, I'm up 50 gems on Steamboat Willie. I guess people are finally catching on to like, oh, this is an important part of animation history. We should probably have one in the bag. And then the little droid that could, man, R2D2.
Wow.
Is he at 6K? Is he at 6K yet? I saw it. I saw him at like 5,500, and I almost literally threw up.
Coming soon.
So those are my 5 collectibles, and then real quick, my 5. Actually, I'll go to you guys for your collectibles first, and then we'll circle back.
Well, I do have a question on that, Carmen. Why?
Sure.
I agree with you, but I'm curious as to your reasoning for R2 over the Mickey hat. I also think R2 is the better long-term play, mostly because if we see the parks start to do something, I think if it can interact with the Star Wars world, it'll be huge. I mean, that'll be a
Yeah.
no-brainer. But there's something to be said for the Mickey hat playing right behind the Walt statue.
Is the Mickey hat is what though? I think it's like 2.8 maybe.
5. Oh wait, the Mickey hat. R2 is 5.2K.
The Mickey hat, R2, right? R2 is 5.2K, but I think the Mickey hat is just not performing where I think I expected it to perform, and I think that's because of Elsa. I just think Elsa is just the better bet of those two.
Oh, it's 3.4. It's not bad.
Okay, so 3.4.
We just got spoiled with R2D2's explosive growth, right?
Yeah,
So
and that's really
respectable.
Yeah, that's really what it was for me. This week is R2 is exploding, and he doesn't really fall back down too much. Where I think the Mickey hat kind of has its like it's a little bit more chaotic. And, the R2 it pops up and then it stays. Maybe it drops $100 and then it pops again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a fair point to be said for C3PO too, because it always is bootstrapped to R2. So as R2 continues to explode, you know it's going to be right behind it. Yeah, I have to agree. I think we start to see Disney, the golden moments, kind of start to split. You're going to see the big ones, Elsa, R2, C3, go way up. I don't know that The Simpsons, as much as I love them, one of my favorite shows, has the same staying power as those three. So I'll be interested to see how they separate themselves going forward.
Yeah. Now, what are your collectibles? What are your top five
All
for this week?
right, so I had just pulled it up. My top five this week. I always start with McBats. I think I'm the same way, right? I don't know that there's a for me. I don't know that there's another answer. I put kind of where it was at last week. It was at 8.4 last week. This time, it was at 12.9 when I wrote this, and I think last I checked, it's at 13.5 is where. So you're looking 8K collectible to a 14. That's 60% growth again in another week. In a month, I can't wait to see where we're sitting at, right? Like, I think there is a fair argument as much as people, you know, maybe we're not the biggest on the ASM 423 look, but I think there is something to be said for Todd possibly. We almost saw him pass Risso once. Does he pass Risso this year? I don't know, but I think there's something to be said for the fact that it's the first ever Veve collectible. I think there's something to be said there. So McBat number one, Spider-Man UR is my number two. 6K last week, 9K this week. I think we still continue to see growth there. It's kind of tracked along the Todd McFarlane Batman. So I think there's something to be said there for if you've got the money to spend. I think it's a solid one. Common Spider-Man was behind that for the same reasons we discussed before. That I think it's going to see the URs jumped 50%. We've seen the rare now jump close to 30-40%. The common's going to be bootstrapped right behind it in some way, shape, or form. Uh, I said Steamboat Willie. I'm not going to belabor that point. You've already hit it. And then my Wonder Woman's my number five. I think that much like you, I don't even think she looks that bad. I think that she will definitely continued to explode upwards in growth. I just don't see how she doesn't. I don't know that she ever catches Superman because Superman's a one man band when it comes to MCP, and there's something to be said for that. But absolutely, I think she's going to cross that 2K threshold very quickly, and she's already seen again another 50% from where we were at last week. Over to you, Nathmar.
I mean, Wonder Woman. I agree with you. And I even think Wonder Woman can hit close to where Superman is. So that's how the potential it could be. Where Superman now, like 5K or something like that, or 7K. I think Wonder Woman can potentially hit that number. So I'm definitely bullish on Wonder Woman. Like Bats, we covered. Um, I think the Joker, I think, has huge potential too. I think that's another potential 5K gain down the road. I think it can hit that easily. The Star Trek Enterprise. I think I'm surprised that it's hitting 1,000 now. So I think that's gonna catch up because people have been sleeping on it. And Harley Quinn. Surprisingly, everybody keeps forgetting there's that first appearance that's like over 20K. It's like I guess we all bypass it because it's all out of our reach, right? So I was like, oh man, that is like at the level near just a little bit under partners and near the MacBats, right? So nobody talks about that first Harley Quinn, right? So that's another one that's we have to watch out for. Comics, I think we covered Fantastic Four 5. That's gonna explode. Undervalued, I think the first appearance of Black Widow still undervalued. I still see it as at $30. I think that can definitely go up to 75 at least in the next few months. AM's 14, I'm bullish on. It's still hitting that 30 range. I think it can hit $50, by the summertime, maybe sooner. Daredevil 1 is still floor common is still 100. I think that's a $200, $300 price range is going to hit before the summertime. So I think Daredevil 1 is primed to explode. So I mean, I just threw out stuff. There's so many to pick from. So these are some that's still stuck to my head, but it's just it's hard to pick now the top five because there's just so many now that can explode or we think is undervalued. Like so, it's just getting harder and harder to pick a top five list every week.
Ray, what about you for comics?
Well, before we go too far, I did want to bring Sean, rest in peace. We're gonna bring in his collectibles and just to hit on two that he mentioned. His number one was the Spider-Man Secret Rare. His number two was Partners, both breaking their respective big floors of ASM broke 50K, Partners broke 20K, and then he actually has Ultramans in his top five, all of them. So I have to agree there. So for looking at comics for me, I don't know that my top three is going to change much anytime soon. Marvel Comics number one, Fantastic Four one, number two, ASM one, number three. Uh, the big three are just they continue to see gains. I do think we're kind of seeing the fact that I think everyone's expecting AF-15, Spider-Man AF-15 to come out, and that's maybe why we're seeing FF1 take that lead, is because there's some other big Spider-Man books to come out, whereas FF1 is the big dog for Fantastic Four. It just is. Um, I think for my number four, I had Fantastic Four 5. We're continuing to see it finally. That was my bet, right? And I think that we'll continue to see some pretty exponential growth behind Fantastic Four 1. And especially if Doctor Doom does make an appearance. It seems like every Marvel comic movie is everyone says, oh, Doctor Doom's going to for sure be in this one. It has to be. I don't know when he actually comes, but he will come eventually, and then that book will explode. And then I think Ultimate Fallout 4 is in the number 5 spot. And I actually think there's a couple arguments for, other, like Nothmar said, some other books to see that number 5 spot. But Ultimate Fallout 4, I do think we're seeing that floor continually shift up. We see it has a good support, and it's starting to hit over 100 consistently. So I think that there's enough play in the market where you can make a good bet with an Ultimate Fallout 4, especially with the new movie coming out here soon. So that's my 5.
Nice. I feel like my 5 comics echo pretty much what you guys were saying. MC1 for me, the fact that it's now maintaining a $400 price point is pretty impressive. And then I go Fantastic Four 1 because it's leapfrogging ASM 1 pretty consistently now. And ASM 1 is not letting me down in any way, but it seems like it'll jump to, I think it jumped as high as 165 today, maybe. But it's also been as low as like 115. So it gets a little messy. So it's not even in my top 5 right now because I don't like what it's doing. What's replaced that is Fantastic Four 5. I mean, I think that moved from like $75 up to, 125. I think it's going to, I don't have one anymore. I sold mine. I think it's going to continue to move. My number 4 last week was Ultimate Fallout 4, but Ultimate Fallout 4, the common issue has fallen out of favor with me because it's still like it's as low as 79 and then it's up to like 100 and then it kind of floats around 80, 82, 83. But I will say it's being replaced by Ultimate Fallout 4 Uncommon. That had a crazy move this week where it was as high as like 210 gems. That is crazy impressive because it was, a 100 gem collectible for a very long time. And for a while, it was like in tandem with the common. Like it would, if it went up 10, the common went up 10. If the common fell back 10, it fell back 10. And then all of a sudden, people figure, like, I don't know if it's the whole, well, you can see his face, and that's the first appearance of his face on a cover, like whatever. But it's kind of has its own life now. And then finally, my number 5, Iron Fist 14. It was up as high as 19. It was down to like 11. I think that's going to continue to move because it's Sabretooth. And it's if you're a Wolverine fan, and most people are, and if you're waiting for a 181 or a Wolverine first appearance, you had better have a couple Iron Fist 14s ready to rock and roll, because they're going to get gobbled up pretty quickly. And if you miss any Wolverine drop, the next best thing is going to be the Iron Fist 14, so you may as well get it now while it's relatively inexpensive. And I think the movement that it's doing is kind of showing that people are catching on to that. So those are our picks. I think.
Well, you know what I do want to add on there real fast? The Sabretooth pick, I love, and I think one of the best secret rare values if someone's looking for an SR right now. It is at 500. I think that is probably, if I was putting a bet down where I didn't want to buy 10 commons, because to be fair, it is difficult, I have found, to unload 10 books at the same time to be able. If I want to do a quick flip, you have to wait for the first one to sell and then put another one up, or else you're going to undercut yourself. I've found that to be difficult, and I think that the secret rare for Sabretooth, we know 180, 181's got to come. At some point, it does, and I'm with you. I think that secret rare, I think I just looked, it is at 540 for a sub 10K mint.
Yep.
Seems like a kind of a no-brainer here.
Yes, I totally agree, because I was looking at some other SRs, and some of the SRs for like ASM 14 was like 600, 700. Now it's like 900. So they're getting out of range. 500 for Sabretooth. I think Ray's got something there.
Yeah, I think that's a great, and I think kind of the flip side, there's been a couple comics that have moved that I don't know that I like. The Gray Hulk, for example, sitting at 40 right now. Which one is that? Incredible Hulk. Off the top of my head, was it 347? Is it $40 right now?
Yeah.
Dr. Fix It. I mean, just for me, I have one because I got it on the drop. But other than that, like, I just don't. If I had $40 to spend, I'm looking at New Mutants 98. I'm not looking at a Dr. Fix It, right? So I do think there's something to be said for being a little careful in which comics you're putting that money into.
Yeah, I did get a little bit Dr. Fix It, so that covers me.
So I mentioned that book in the article. When that book dropped, I think people are running towards the mint and the print runs now, and I saw someone write like, oh, I tried to grab it on the drop and I FOMO'd and I paid like twice as much as what it's worth now at the floor. And I think some of these comics can get really dangerous, because if you don't know what you're buying and you don't know the significance of the book, you're out. Like it just, I don't care how many they're making, a great example is, and I don't have a single copy of this book, the ASM 14 Green Goblin. It was like, oh, there were 70,000 printed. Who cares? And now that book is doing very, very well, as opposed to, oh yeah, Mr. Fix-It first, Gray Hulk as Mr. Fix-It. It's there's only 10K. It's probably going to go crazy. It's going to be the next Kang. But I think anybody who knows comics is like, it's definitely not going to be the next Kang. We've known that for 5 years or 20 years. It's just not that great of a book. So to your point, I think with these comics, it's time for if you're not familiar with comic books, to do a little bit of homework to really get a sense of value. Because like you said, if I'm going to spend $40 on a Mr. Fix-It, I'm just going to buy another New Mutants 98. I'll buy a New Mutants 98 and a
ASM 14.
Right, and I'll buy one of those books for sure.
All day. Spidey's, right? You got to get a Spidey.
Yep, absolutely. Now, we're going to switch gears. So let's see we got about 15 minutes left in the show. So we're going to do one versus like we did from last week, and then we're going to talk about some of sort of the chatter that we're hearing about NFTs, some of the criticisms we're hearing about NFTs, just sort of just have that conversation about why we find value in them. So we're going to go with so I broke them up into 3 groups and we could pick. We can either talk about the Steamboat Willie UR versus Todd, or we can talk about indie artists versus Disney.
Wow.
And I'll let you pick. Nothmar, what do you think? Where are you at?
I would go for the. Oh man, I think both of them are a slaughter though, so towards one way. So I would
Really?
go for the Steamboat Willie versus Todd. But that's an easy pick though.
And you think
Todd easily
so? My
because
question
other
is
than
why?
yeah, I mean, there's the obvious one. I mean, it's a first appearance. It's the first Veve collectible, right? That one, plus the. I mean, I know you don't like it, but that was the first thing. That's why I bought it. That was the most expensive NFT I bought when I started at like something like 400. I bought it because I said it's got the look, that can probably explode. So I think between it being has a look, it's got a first appearance, and also it's the first Veve collectible. I think that will take it to another level. Like some people were speculating it's gonna go over whatever 50K or 70K or whatever. I think it's possible, given its significance in that kind of birth all these Veve collectibles, collective collections, right? So, I mean, the Steamboat Willie. I mean, I'm surprised it is where it is, but I mean, I do have one, one edition of it, so I'm surprised where it is. I think because of it's a Mickey, one of the early Mickey collectibles, it can go up, but I don't know if it can even come close to where Todd can be, in a year or two from now. So
All right, nice. Ray, what about you?
I want to take the same one up, and I'm gonna, one of these days I'm gonna go against Nothmar. I'd be really
I
excited
know.
for that. But no, I'm gonna take the same position. But I want to start out with this is an interesting one because the Veve Collectibles Facebook group has talked about this at length over the past 24 hours, and there's a lot of people that are saying Steamboat Willie, you are over Todd, and I have no idea. I think that a lot of the arguments for Steamboat Willie is that it's the first Mickey and that it's going to see the first Mickey in Disney, right? Maybe not on the app, but just it has historical significance, and that it will increase as more Mickeys come out on the platform. But I think what they're not seeing is that Batman is what the number one superhero in the world. The recognition he gets. He's the first Veve collectible, the first Batman. He's the first DC collectible. I mean, there's so much going for him. And the Steamboat Willie, I think we're just, as much as I hate to say it on the UR, I think we're going to see a pretty drastic drop on the next big decon week because I don't know that it has the same support going for it. I think that the animation's cool, but we know the Disney golden moments were the first. I think they look better. I think that they have, again, as we look at what's going to be integrated into that Disney metaverse, as if they ever come out with one, I think people are going to be wanting that Star Wars. They're going to want the Walt statue. They're going to want, I don't know, if you're spending 6.9K, I just do not see how Steamboat Willie is the pick. And I think that there's a lot of FOMO going right now with that pick, and there's a lot of bigger influencers on Twitter from what I've seen pumping it. But as soon as they're like, "We'll sell your steamboats because now we've got the next big thing," that's going to happen. But they can't say sell the Todds because the Todd actually has so many criteria and factors supporting its price position. Whereas Steamboat Willie, maybe it can continue where on its trajectory, but I see no argument between Todd and Steamboat. If it was two Steamboat URs or one Todd, I'm buying a Todd 10 times out of 10.
I mean, one thing that they can argue though is like if you can't afford the Todd and you can't afford partners, then yeah, hey, Steamboat Willie could be the next in line, right? Because that's, if it's still under X amount that people think that they can afford, that's probably the next in line. But
But I would take an R2 plus an Elsa. It's the same price. And then
yeah,
you've got two golden moments. You're diversified between the first. Elsa's got some first attached to it. We heard Veve say, and R2 is Star Wars. That's
yeah,
huge.
Star Wars
I mean,
definitely.
I would take those two before I take Steamboat UR.
So I was not. I mean, that's probably the strongest point. I wasn't even thinking that. Right, this idea that I can get an Elsa and an R2, and I feel like it's probably a better come up the than Steamboat Willie UR. The only thing that will save Steamboat UR is, I think, utility. Because that's the thing about Disney could wave a magic wand and just
Hmm.
decide that this Steamboat, that because of what it is or whatever, it now carries with it some sort of value, whether it's in the park or whatever. So if I'm thinking like 5 years from now and that Steamboat Willie has some sort of application in a park or whatever, I think it changes the face of everything. But right now, if everything stays the way it is, yeah, I think Todd is probably is definitely a more significant um, collectible. I had the
I'm so
is that
jealous, Nathmar. I looked on eBay to see if I could find one, and there was nothing.
the
Oh, I thought
McFarlane?
there was a couple of them. No,
Oh, I didn't see it.
there's still
I
a
had
couple.
looked.
Is that the McFarlane Toys one?
Yes, it is definitely McFarlane Toys. Yes, based. Well, no, it says based on the art of McFarlane, gold label McFarlane collection.
Mm, yeah,
So,
right. So I think that's the thing. It depends on how significant it's going to be in 5 years. I don't want to kick them when they're down, but I'm gonna pick this. The indie artists versus Disney.
sure.
At first I thought it was a cool conversation, but now that we're having these conversations about
Yeah,
golden moments, I just don't know if it makes sense to spend $1,000 on a Diro or $1,000 on, or even right now, I think that Vulture, right? The
I just bought one
Macabre
today.
or
I bought the Vulture today too.
is, so that's what did you pay for? It was like 350.
Something like that, 300, mid 300s. Yeah, I mean, see, that's the
Yeah.
big one,
So I
right?
mean, I don't even know if
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Carmen.
I don't know if I just don't know if that's ever going to carry. Now that here's what I'll say, I guess now that Steamboat Willie is at the Steamboat Willie Common is back up to like 6 and change, it's a different conversation. But when the Steamboat Willie was 385 or 375, it was kind of in this world of these indie artists, and I think that in and of itself kind of answers that question. Um, we're seeing, and I said indie artists versus Disney, but really it's indie artists versus corporate anything, right? If
Yep.
you're going to pick between a brand new drop from an artist that does whatever, or a Catwoman or whoever, there's just so much upside for this other stuff than there is for the indie, unless it's like unless Banksy decides to do a licensing deal with Veve, which would go against everything that he stands for anyway. One of those guys kind of pulled the trigger. I just don't see the indie artists holding up.
Oh,
Carmen,
Um,
go ahead, Ray.
I was going to add, I think the other thing, too, because you're huge into utility, so am I. Look at the potential utility that Disney can bring to their collectibles, interfacing that into every IP they have. They've
Yep.
already started giving you
Off the beat.
I mean, I got the 3 months free Disney Plus, right? But they incorporate them into the parks, daily passes, whatever you could get out of that. It's huge. An indie developer, the hoverboards and the cars are great because you can see the utility there in renting. But like the Vulture, for example, niche artists, niche, I think it's still a good pickup. The Vulture is just because it's like the set and what it has going for it. But they're not going to be able to offer the utility that Disney could offer for theirs, right? I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. When you're in Disney, do you want to be driving around the DeLorean? Because I think that's also a Disney IP, if I'm not mistaken. But I think as they expand and we start to see what Disney can offer in terms of integration into their metaverse, Indy can't keep up. I just don't see any way that it can. So as even that argument, I think, weighs in favor of Disney.
All
Yeah,
right,
you
I
hear
think I'm
people
ready.
say things like,
Oh.
"Oh, go ahead, Nothmar. Sorry."
No, I wanted to down. I think I can battle here though, because I think you guys both Disney. I think the indie has the long-term potential. Right now, yes, it's hard to beat, like what Ray was saying, the utility, they have theme parks, etc. But they're still limited, right? Like Disney has to follow. You only have your set amount of characters. You have Mickey, Donald Duck, etc., etc. Indies, that is the whole point of NFTs, right? It gives independents like the same level platform to compete against these corporates. So there's nothing holding them back. They can come up with 1,000 different types of Mickeys or new characters like left and right, and we're already seeing that right in OpenSea. They're flooding the market, and a few of those that just picks up. The potential is crazy, right? Like see what happened to the Board Yacht Club or those other big ones. That is the potential for indies. Yes, there's going to be a lot of crap, but there's going to be a lot of artists that will see this as their future. A lot of comic book creators, for example, they'll be like, "Hey, why do I keep creating the same artwork for Marvel where I don't have rights? They'll pay me whatever 10, 20K per comic book versus here I create my new character. If it picks up, then I have unlimited wealth. I can create like 100,000 copies, sell them. The potential. So content people creators are more inspired to create new characters and publish it themselves without the help. So I think the market's gonna change longer term. The landscape is gonna be so much different. And as these indies get more money, yeah, they'll start creating their own indie theme park or fast food or games or etc. And then and now they're at the level playing field with the Disneys. So long term, I think these indies have the bigger potential.
Yeah, but it's going to be hard to pick which ones, right? Like
It's
you
hard to
said,
pick
there's
this
going to be
one.
so many big ones
It's
and
hard.
small ones that I, as
It's
an
hard.
investor, again, I just don't know. I
It's
agree.
hard.
There's going to be some that skyrocket and that do well. If
It's hard.
James Tinian comes out with a couple good,
Yeah, there we go.
Something is Killing the Children
I mean,
comics or
these big
collectibles,
names. Yeah,
yeah,
these big
that'd be
names.
awesome, right? But
Yeah.
I think it's too tough for me because I know what when Disney says here's Donald Duck first ever, I know what that means. I know what I can attach to that. But when they say here's the first Miro, I just don't know what the significance. And I think it's hard to say what in 6 years is Indy going to be able to offer, which one's going to make enough to be able to do the theme park or whatever it happens to be. Whereas I know Disney has the amusement park. So I agree. I think that you're going to see some indies probably outperform Marvel. I think there's got to be the big ones. I think you hit on it perfectly enough, Mar. But I just, for me, if I'm investing for the 5 year term, I want to go with the. It's hard to bet against the mouse. Kind of the same as the stock market for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
You just don't bet against Disney.
So
It's
maybe
tough.
it's a balance. You just say I'll invest 80% in like Marvel and then 20% in indie. So at least you're covered with the indies, right? So something like that balance, right?
Now, I don't want to cut us short, but we don't have much time. Final thoughts on the week, on NFTs at large. Where are we at, Ray? Final thoughts. What do you have?
Final thoughts. I'm going to be looking for some kind of a good deal this week. I don't love the comics that are coming out. I'm not huge into what they're bringing this week. I do think you're going to catch some investors trying to sell in order to catch all five for whatever reason. Um, I think this will be a good chance to maybe catch some things slipping before we go into the weekend.
Nice. Nothmar, what about you?
Now, for me, I want to see some changes longer, a little short term and longer term. I want to see some more utility with these NFTs. So that way, more people outside of our small group of investors will jump in. Like, hopefully, comic book collectors who haven't jumped in will see that, hey, NFTs have like 20 more utility or functionality than the regular comic book, right? So I want to see the industry keep innovating, like Fastos from Eternals, making sure that innovation, happens in our NFT industry. That way, there's no competition, right? You'll be like, NFTs can do 20 different things versus a regular comic. You can just read it and that's it, right? So I want to see that innovation.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. I'm looking forward to news about how we're going to start being able to apply these items to our everyday lives. And I think that's probably my biggest sell for anyone who has been asking like what the point of them are. Like because art in general is just hard to explain to people, and I'm just as guilty, right? Like I like hardcore bands, and if someone's like, why do you listen to that? It's like, oh man, all right, let me just okay. So and there's a lot to unpack for why one thing versus another. Art's complicated and it's very subjective. But what's nice about NFTs is if you start selling it as like a measurable thing, and you start addressing it as an experience, people can kind of wrap their heads around. One of the things I keep going back to, and this is me just hoping, I'm trying to will this into existence. This idea that, if I have an R2 and a C3PO together, I own both of them as a set, it gets me into Hollywood studios for free. And I can rent that set to people and they can get in and I can make money off of that rental. That's one thing. If you break them up, if I have an R2, maybe that gets you 50% discount into the entry of a theme park. If you have just the C3PO, maybe that gets you a 30% discount into a theme park. And that's pretty, in my opinion, again, who am I? I don't know. I'm sure I'm like, oh, it's easy to do. And so many people were like, this guy's a moron. He has no idea how hard this is. But I just think Disney can wave the magic wand and people can just start entering theme parks with their phones and saying like, here's my QR code for my R2, scan it, and then let me in. So I'm hoping to see more utility, and I hope people start explaining NFTs with utility in mind when they're trying to sell it to people, because that's kind of really why I'm as invested in it as I am.
Yep.
So, all right, we are at a minute, an hour and two. Gentlemen, thank you so much for once again hanging out.
Fun times, love it.
Yes, absolutely. If anybody has any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Check us out at NFT Marketplace and Dojo on the Facebook groups. And then if you want to find us online, it's nftmpd.com. You can also contact us there. We will see you all next week. And goodbye from the dojo, guys. Have a good one. Bye.
Later.
Later.